So this is how a prank call could lead to a shitty relationship. So this might sound immature, but one day my friend and I thought it'd be funny to make some prank calls, so we called this guy that she knew. The guy we prank called had a really good sense of humor about it, so he decided to keep messaging me after. I really just wanted attention and decided to keep talking to him. And then that's when we FaceTimed. He was so cute and we continued to talk back and forth. But I had to go on vacation with my family for a few days, so we couldn't meet up quite yet. For this trip, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I said yes, but it wasn't long until he started to notice that I wasn't much of a simp for him. This really bothered him, but he ended up going about it all the wrong way. He decided to start making up stories in order to get attention from me. They would be about him or his family, and he would just do it to get me to listen to him more. And me being a dumbass just kind of ignored this red flag and continued on in the relationship. So one day he sent me a message saying some guys had beat him up, even though in a previous picture he showed me he didn't have any bruises. 3 days later, when I was outside of a club, he messaged me that he had a brain bleed which led to a stroke and now he has permanent brain damage. Like for part 2. Part 2, a prank call might lead you to a shitty relationship. I literally stormed out of the club crying my eyes out. Straight up thought my boyfriend had severe brain damage. He told me this was a condition that he was going to have to spend the rest of his life with, and I cried until the morning. Once it got to the next day though, I kind of noticed that he was talking normally, he wasn't in the hospital, so I got really sus about it. So I decided to go ahead and text his mom through my mom's phone, just to check in and see how he was doing from her perspective, and she was like, "Oh, he's fine, it was just a little scare." A little scare? Brain damage is a little scare? He was like, "In fact, he's out biking right now." So I just stormed out to go dig some more information. I found out he messaged my best friend telling her not to tell any of his friends about his seizure. So I decided to confront him and called him fuming. And at first he denied everything. He was like, "No, it's all true." So I told him I needed a break, and that's when he was like, wait. I googled some of the symptoms that I was having and that's what showed up. So you use Dr. Google. I just broke it off with him. If you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Insta.
Story time about how I slept with my own dad. By the way, the story is anonymous. Now, keep in mind, I never knew who my dad was from birth, but I knew he lived in the same state as me. So I was a senior in college, and it was getting so hard for me to graduate. So one day I went in early to speak with our professor about the homework, and we had a new professor. I was so upset because our other professor was so lenient with me. He understood everything. I was going to have to catch this new dude up on everything. I was hoping he wasn't strict, but just like I thought, he was extremely strict. He went by Professor Tom, which was his first name because he said it made him feel old to go by his last. So graduation started coming up, and I was talking to my best friend like, "Girl, what should I do?" I was failing so many of my classes, it was just so hard. Then when I told her we had a new professor, she was like, "Oh, girl, you screwed." So once me and her got to class the next day, she was like, "Oh, girl, he is cute." She's like, "You know what you're going to have to do by the end of the semester if you're still failing, right?" Like for part 2. Part 2 story time about how I slept with my biological father. By the way, this story is very anonymous. So my best friend was suggesting that I had to sleep with him to pass my classes. I did not want to take it there, but by the way my grades was looking, I had no choice. So I asked him to start tutoring me after classes. He agreed to tutor me, and I got a lot closer to him. So one day I came in for tutoring, and I locked the door. I told him I had a surprise for him just to show appreciation for him helping me. He was like, "And what is that?" Long story short, we did the do on his desk. We both had a great time. After that, my grades were not a problem. So the next day I was freaking out telling my best friend everything that happened. And she was kind of happy for me. So after classes, I went home and my mom told me my dad was coming over for dinner. She was like, "Honey, he's moved closer to us so he can get closer to you." She goes, "He actually just started teaching after college." My stomach hit the floor. So I hear someone knock on the door and I am sweating. She opens the door, it's my professor. I blacked out and I don't remember anything after that.
Story time, how I didn't know I was deaf until I was 16. So the school district that I grew up in basically did hearing tests every single year. And for as long as I could remember, I was failing those tests. But they would always ask me one question after them. "Have you been sick within the last few weeks?" I always was sick when I was younger, so I'd say yes. And they'd say, "Oh, your sinuses are probably just clogged up." And I was like, whatever, I'm in the 2nd grade. And then I'd go on about my day. Kept happening over and over again. This happens from elementary school, middle school, all the way up until my sophomore year of high school. So my sophomore year, I get called up to the nurse's office after the initial hearing test. My nurse was like, "Hey, you failed the hearing test." And I was like, "Yeah, what else is new?" That was just normal to me. So she was like, "You know what, we're going to retest you here." So I retest right in front of her and I fail again. I explained to her like, "This has happened every year, like it's not really a big deal to me." And she was like, "No, it kind of is a big deal, like this happens every year." I was like, "Yes." "Have they ever contacted your parents?" "No." So she calls my mom in to talk to her. My mom comes in, they talk. Part 2. Part 2. So I get sent over to a primary care doctor to get a hearing test there. Fail it. They send me over to an audiologist. fail it. They send me over to a fancier audiologist and they do a different test on me. They put these little things that look like earbuds in your ears. I don't even know how they do this test, but basically they were just shooting super loud noise in my ears and measuring something inside my head. I don't know. I was like, cool, they're gonna realize that like there's nothing wrong with me. Fail it. Worse than before. So I started getting concerned. They couldn't give me a diagnosis yet, so all I knew is that my hearing is worse than I thought, but I don't know why. So they send me over to an ENT surgeon. He diagnoses me with otosclerosis, which just means the little bones in my ears that are supposed to conduct sound aren't conducting sound properly. This doctor gives me two options. I can either get hearing aids, or I could get the surgery where they replace those bones with synthetic bones that may help my hearing. The recovery process was kind of long, and it could go wrong and I could lose my hearing completely. Almost 4 years later, I love my hearing aids and I love being a part of the
Be careful on who you decide to meet up with on a dating app because you might just end up on a date with a narcissist. When I was in Denver, I ended up matching with a really hot 39-year-old who also happened to be a lawyer. I recently called off an engagement, so casually dating other people was kinda in the books for me. Before meeting him, I made sure I took all the usual precautions. We made it very, very clear what our boundaries were and said that there was no expectations. So like either of us could leave after a drink and it would be totally fine. Also, we made sure to FaceTime and he seemed super sweet, totally normal. However, the second we sat down, it seemed like he was on drugs. He would literally talk a million miles an hour about himself and wouldn't let me get a breath in. And the stuff he was bringing up was just odd. Like he even included that he broke off an engagement too. Hold on to that thought. 2 drinks in, this man leans over and says, I've been diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenic disorder, but I didn't want to talk about it over text. Because I don't know a whole lot about those mental disorders, I felt a little uncomfy. I also didn't feel like that was a first date topic. Then he literally starts joking about murdering me and states that he would use my dead body for Face ID to text my friend that I'm safe so the timing is off for the investigation. Like for part 2 of going on a date with a narcissist. So I start getting uncomfy and getting ready to leave. He offers to call a car and I say, oh no, it's fine, you got my drink, I'm just gonna go. And he gets confused and he's like, wait, what's going on here? Are we not going home together? I expressed that I was just tired and I wanted to get back to my hotel so that I could sleep and get on the road in the morning. He could not have been more offended by this and kept trying to make sexual comments to get me to come back to his place. Like, no, that's creeping me out more. So I get into my Uber and I make it home alone, and he texts me, tell Elise I said happy birthday tomorrow. That is my mom's name, and it was her birthday tomorrow, but I didn't tell him any of this information over drinks. That's when I realized he had found my Facebook, and then he called me. He proceeded to go off and lecture me because he couldn't comprehend why I wouldn't sleep with someone as great as he is. He expressed how much better he is than my ex-fiance, who I never brought up over dinner. This is when he let me know that he did his research on me before even meeting me. And I realized that a lot of the conversations that we had over drinks was him just verifying that I was the same person he found on Facebook. He still contacts me and I don't know what to do or say. Follow for more.